Hello, hello, hello. Today I'm talking with Mun-Wai. We talked about how the world is changing faster than ever and sitting in the corner versus being in the limelight. I'm Ivanul from Who's Agile. My pronouns are he and him. Welcome to my channel. You see a lot of agilists around me on this screen. If you want to hear me interviewing, please click that subscribe button because these are the people that I've invited so far. If you think I'm missing people, let me know in the comments. And that like button, well, if you liked today's interview, don't forget to click it. Hello, hello everyone, and hello with me. I have Mun-Wai. Is that how I should pronounce your name? Probably not.
Mun-Wai.
Mun-Wai. Okay, thank you.
Mun-Wai. Moonlight Monday. Mun-Wai.
Mun-Wai. Okay. This is why I like to ask it actually on camera, because otherwise, if I would fake it and ask it before, it sounds like everybody I know it. But yeah, this is, I think, with the remote work and working with people from all around the world, it's really nice to learn about how names are pronounced and everything like that. So yeah.
Absolutely.
And talking about all around the world, what I want to show is I'm here in Ghent in Belgium, and we're going to use Google to travel all around the world. And I think we're going to Silicon Valley where you are. Is that a correct?
Yeah, it's close enough.
Yeah, the goal is of course not to help stalkers and to give you the exact location. That's not the intention. And on my side, it's 15 minutes after 9 in the evening. What's the time on your side?
It is 15 minutes after 12 noon, so 12:15 p.m.
So you see that it's not just miles away; it's lots of time zones away as well. That's a little bit how we roll these days. And yeah, this is what I like so much about these conversations. That yeah, this is possible to have that kind of conversations, both yeah, from our own location, wherever we select for, and have that. Now, for the few people that don't know you, will you, before we jump into the questions, introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. So I'm going to pronounce my name again. So my name is Mun-Wai, but you can also call me MW if that is easier.
Mm.
So, who is MW? Well, I am a very curious being, always wondering, exploring, and questioning the status quo. Well, not questioning for questioning's sake, but seek to understand why things are done a certain way or why people do what they do, and explore better or easier ways to achieve the same purpose. You may probably hear this theme throughout our conversation today. You may call it inquisitive, and it's this kind of curiosity that leads me to where I am today. Now, I'm wondering, do you want me to give you examples of what I mean? Because it can be a bit long.
I think that might indeed be interesting. I'm not sure if we do it now or do we do it during the rest of the questions. That's a little bit up to you, I would say. Both
Yeah,
for
let's
me
do
are
it now.
fine.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
do it now.
Yeah, give
So,
some examples.
so I will have to go back 20 plus years to my first job. I
Hmm.
was spoiled when I first started working. My boss allowed me and everyone on his team to be curious. In fact, he encouraged us to ask questions. So, of course, I used the fact that I just graduated from engineering graduate school and go around and talk to people and to understand them, what they do, their approaches, and what led to their approaches, meaning why they do what they do. Now,
Hmm.
most of the people I talk to have been working in the same industry for 20 years. Needless to say, I learned a lot, especially on how to talk to and work with people who are a lot more senior than I am. Oh, I forgot to mention, I was actually in a leadership position. So I was
Oh,
baptized by fire. On learning how to lead people who are yeah, both in age and experience. Yep, you got that. But it was a great working environment. Even though being the youngest, I felt included and a sense of team cohesiveness. And the project actually finished on time and under budget. And our customer even gave us a plaque in the shape of California to congratulate us.
wow. And
Yeah,
that's your first working experience.
that's my first working experience. Now, unfortunately, after I changed job, I found that that kind of working environment is not the norm. In fact, it was an
Mm.
exception. So for the next 20 plus years, My goal has always been helping teams work effectively together while producing a product that delights the customer. Now, coming from engineering background, of course, I thought the problem came from product management. Who else can it be? If only they would shape up, right? So I went into product management. Now, because of my curiosity and the need to actually understand, I realized while they may cause some problems, there are external factors that affect the way that they behave. And that led me to deal with executive management, HR, finance, and even facilities. Now, I also mentioned producing a product that delights the customers. Otherwise, it's meaningless, right? So, of course, that led me to explore what that takes, especially in an environment that is uncertain and fast changing. Now, amidst all of those, is really me challenging how people think. For example, many people would say something like, "Oh, it's always been done this way," or "This is the way to do it." I would ask, "Well, why? What are you trying to achieve?" And then follow up with, "So, is how things are being done today actually help achieve the purpose? And if not, why are we still doing it?" Now, some people got upset when I asked these questions, but usually the answer came back saying, "Oh, well, we don't know any other way," or "We can't afford to try new ways because this project or whatever is too important and we need tried and true solutions." I usually was able to convince people to test some ways of working in a small area, which usually leads to a much bigger change across an organization later on. Now, today, the world is changing faster than ever before. I'm sure you agree with that. And a
Oh, yeah.
lot of people, including CEOs and executives, are exhausted trying to keep up. So I'm helping CEOs and executives not only to keep pace, but to adapt and thrive no matter what the future brings. Oh, and spoiler alert, if teams are able to work effectively together while producing a product that delights the customer, the company is able to adapt and thrive. So I hope that gives you a sense of who I am.
Definitely, definitely, it's wonderful, and I see already a lot of drive, a lot of passion. So we'll definitely jump into to some of these more. So let's jump immediately into that very first question. What is something that people usually don't know about you, but has influenced you in who you are?
Well, I am a Christian, a follower of Jesus Christ since I was 8 or 9 years old. Now, in the business world, people usually don't know about this, but in my personal life, my friends and family do. And that's because I don't normally talk about it unless people ask. And there are quite a few occasions people ask me when they saw me behaving and acting in a way that was so different from how normal people act. Now, what I mean by that? Well, from my introduction, you probably realize I'm always working in uncertain and fast changing environments, isn't it? And unfortunately, most people don't like changes and they react differently when changes come. And I'm usually smack in the middle of it, or I got the brunt of it, meaning I'm at the receiving end of people's reactions to change, which includes some very unhealthy and even toxic high pressured work environments. Now, a lot of people get stressed out in such environments, or they resort to acting in some ways in the same way, which contributes to the toxicity of the work environments. Now, for me, I was told I was always cheerful, upbeat, energetic, and positive. I didn't resort to antics that other people used against me. Now, I said I was told because some of my colleagues asked me how I could be that way in such an unhealthy environment. Some colleagues even said, "Oh, it's because I have the coverings from executive management. Maybe it's not nepotism, but I got favors from them." That was the funniest comment because I didn't know anyone from those companies before I joined. So no, no nepotism, no favors. But the reason I wasn't stressed out or acted the same way as others were, because while I didn't know anyone in those companies and I don't know what the future brings, I know who holds the future. That same someone who created everything, the heavens and the earth and everything in it and under it, including you and I. And his name is God. So why do I need to stress out? He holds the future, he knows what will happen, and I know he loves me and has my best interest at heart, even though I disagree with him at times what is truly my best interest. Now, usually I find out later on that he actually knows what I need because what I think I need is really what I want. And a lot of times, sad to say, they're not really good for me. So no
Yeah,
matter what the future brings, if I follow him and submit to him, he'll help me through, even though I also may not agree with the way he helps me. But that's what enables me to have a cheerful, upbeat, energetic, and positive demeanor. I hope that
Uh,
answered the question.
Yeah, definitely. And I really like well, it reminds me a little bit what you said reminds me also about one of the songs from the Rolling Stones is you can't always get what you want, but you get what you need. And that's exactly what what you said in different words, much more in smarter ways, I would say. But yeah, that's exactly sometimes we disagree on and we think we want this, and then in the end we get something else and we get annoyed, or at least I get sometimes annoyed, and then some months later you realize that actually that was probably the best thing that happened to me, or the better way of thinking, like so
Yeah.
that is
And that is
so yeah.
annoying too.
Oh,
That is so
yes.
annoying. After it's like, oh, shucks. I thought I knew better, but I didn't. Oh, that's annoying.
That's and it's part of learning, I would say, and at the time,
Yes, it
and
is.
well, and accepting some of that it's actually better, because I think, well, I don't know how it's for you, but for me, it took a while to then actually accept, okay, that other thing that threw my life away, that was actually a lesson that was interesting to learn.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's jump into that second question. If you had not been doing what you've been doing now, do you have any idea what could have become of you?
Who knows? Uh, I could be a professional classical singer, I could be a ballroom dancer, who knows? But hey, I am already into my fourth career. I mean, first I
Wow.
was an engineer, which I think you knew from my introduction, right? That's my first job engineer. And then I went into program management. And then I went to the chief of staff role. And now I'm business agility consultant and executive coach. Oh, and pepper in between all those, I'm also a speaker, a podcaster, and a soon to be author. I never thought I would be any of that. So, wherever and whatever God leads me is perfectly fine.
Exactly, and that's but that if you look, this is interesting because you had already multiple careers and you do multiple things now, I would say. If you look back on your life when you were young, was this also something you thought that you would do multiple things, or was there something in your life that you thought, oh, I will be, I don't know, I'm not talking about the 5-year-olds that want to be, I don't know what, but was there something, I don't know, when you're 15, 16, something that you thought this is going to be my dream job, or this is what I would like to do?
Well, you are bringing up a very interesting conversation that I have had with my parents ever since I was a little kid. Because my parents always want to know what I wanted to do when I grew up, right? I mean,
Hmm.
that's especially as a Chinese, that's what they want to know. And my answer, I don't know. And that usually infuriates them because they think that if
Hmm.
I don't, if I don't have a goal, then I'm going to drop out of school and I'll be a bum. But my question to them is, well, how many people do you know are actually doing what they said they are going to do when they were, let's say, single digit young? I mean, of course, there's some. Don't get me wrong. There are some people who knew that they wanted to be a doctor like 8 or 9 years old, and they're laser focused, and yeah, they're a doctor. But most people are not like that, and those people are really rare, right? And so, to be very honest, some of the jobs today didn't even exist 20 or 30 years ago, or even
Great.
10 years, right? So, no, I never knew what I was going to do. My parents have been asking me since I was growing up, and my answer every single year is I don't know. I think a better answer is I didn't know enough. So
Hmm.
I wouldn't know the answer because when I was 8 or 9 years old, what have I known? I don't know much. So I have no clue what I wanted to do. When I grow a little older, maybe 15, 16, 17, I'm like, well, I like science. I like, actually applied science, which is engineering, because I don't just want to talk about theory. I want to know, hey, how does it apply to my day-to-day work and day-to-day life? And so I want to learn applied science. And so I went into engineering. But the interesting thing is, um, I knew that I wasn't going to be an engineer for the rest of my life. What does that mean? No clue. Uh, why do I actually went to graduate school even though I knew that I wasn't going to be an engineer for the rest of my life? Because I didn't think I knew enough. a bachelor degree to me didn't know enough. And after
Mm,
masters, I'm like, okay, that's enough. I mean, in fact, I was actually only one a PhD, but I didn't want to be a PhD because I knew I wasn't going to be, an engineer for the rest of my life. So yeah, and then how I actually choose what discipline of engineering was electrical engineering. My dad loves to ask me that question, and I gave him this answer and I told him that, well, let's see. So I love chemical engineering, but here's the problem. If I'm careless and I spill chemicals, then, my face will be defaced and there'll be bubbles pulling. Ugh, yuck. That's terrible. And then I said, now nuclear engineering, I also is very interested in nuclear engineering. But, if I get exposed to all those things, and then that's actually not a bad way because then when I die, it will be like pinkish color. So I'll look pretty. As in mechanical engineering, I don't have enough strength. And so it went on and on like that. And my dad actually told me, Mun-Wai, if you don't want to tell me why you chose electrical engineering, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to come up with excuses like that. And my
mm,
mom actually was like pondering, said, I don't think she came up with excuse. I think that's the way she thinks. I think that's the way our daughter thinks. And
mm.
I'm looking back, I'm like, Mom, you got it. That's actually how I thought. My dad actually said, why electrical engineering? What happened if you put your finger into the socket, the electrical socket? I said, oh, Dad, then I got a natural perm. I don't even need to spend money in a hairdresser to get my hair perm. Woohoo! Yeah, so he thought I was just joking, and stop coming up with excuses like this. And my mom's like, no, I think that's how she actually thinks.
Yeah,
And my
she
mom
thinks
is,
that.
that's how I think.
And so, but not just how you think, but at the same time, your mother kind of realized that and acknowledged who you are. And I think, especially at a young age, that's so important that you don't feel just questions, but you also feel supported. And I think it's a little bit both. There's the so-called mother and father roles. Yeah, a father is some kind of the archetype is like pushing a person out the door to learn to stand on your own, and the mother role is much more, or the archetypal mother role, I should say, is more the kind of nurturing and caring. Doesn't mean that it always have to be a man or a woman. That's a different kind of thing, but it's good to have both. I think, yeah, it's the questioning and the person understanding you and saying, hey, I think this is actually what you are. And did you realize at that
Until
time
my parents switched.
how? What did you say? I
No,
missed that part.
oh, I was saying that my parents actually switch roles all the time. So, sometimes one is the nurturing one, the other is, and then they
Yeah,
switch
like
roles
many,
again.
I think.
So, yeah, exactly. So I'm like, okay. No, I did not. I mean, to me, it's just a logical way of thinking. I guess I'm too logical or too rational. So yeah, I mean, I didn't know enough to make any decisions. So when you asked me when I was young, what am I going to do? I have no idea. And then when I, got to learn more, then I said, no, I like science and I like to know how it applies to my day-to-day life. That means engineering. So I go into engineering. And then how to choose electrical engineering, I just told you, right? By process of elimination, basically. And then afterwards, it's like, I still don't know enough. So I went into graduate school. And then after that, it's like, okay, well, I knew I'm not going to be engineer for the rest of my life. So, because I like dealing with people a lot more. I don't want to sit in front of a computer for 8 hours a day. Well, guess what I do now? So that's actually an irony.
Yeah,
Um,
I get that.
so
Yeah.
so yeah, so yeah, all of those changes, and if we have whole day, I could tell you, how I changed from one career to another. Is because I know something more. It's like, oh, this is what I liked, and this is what I want to do. And this seems to resonate more. Um, and that's how I change. So.
And then you move into something else, and then a couple of years later, you might move into something else because you have more things somewhere else. Yeah.
More
Really nice
knowledge.
story. Exactly.
So
I want to move to that next question. What is, for you at this moment, your biggest challenge, at least the biggest challenge you want to share open on the internet, and why is that a good thing for you?
Well, first is I actually don't like to be in the limelight, so an interview like that is definitely a big challenge.
Hmm.
And yet everything I do is forefront. Like like speaking in front of an audience, singing in a concert hall, leading people. Those are all upfront. If I have my way, I'd like to sit in the corner and observe people around me or talk to people one on one to understand them, where
Mm.
they came from, why they do what they do. To me, that's more fun and enjoyable for me. So it actually takes a lot out of me to be in the limelight, but I was told I was rather good at it. I suppose that's a good thing because I don't try to steal the limelight and fight people to get to the front. I don't posture and try to make myself look good so other people would notice me. But then I get the limelight anyway, so that pisses some people off. And that's usually not that good because I have to deal with people who are upset and act aggressively against me. And it can be politics, it can be bullying. Um, but then think of all this, why is all this a good thing for me? Well, because I constantly do things outside of my comfort zone. So I get to learn and grow. I also learn how to deal with oppositions from any directions, any levels, and I learn how to deal with them in a way that is not tit for tat. And that also usually infuriates people even more.
Yeah, that's yeah. I recognize so much of that. Like, okay, the not wanting to be at the front and center, and at the same time somehow following into that, and then also the fact that some people might not like it or might, yeah, don't understand it. Yeah, it's a lot of that is recognizable, I think, for many people. But and like you say, it's also part of the job in a way for many, that, well, if you want to be a speaker, you have to be there up front, and then you have to really stand there, because that's how that job works best. But that doesn't mean that that comes natural to many people, and that's what I'm hearing for you is like, yeah, okay, it feels kind of awkward or maybe something else, but that somehow you're still are good at that. So yeah, that's nice. And so if that's your biggest challenge, why is that a good thing for you?
Well, because that forces me to do things outside of my comfort zone, as I just mentioned, right?
Mm,
Because I then get to learn and grow. I mean, if I always stay in my comfort zone, then I'm not gonna ever learn anything new. This actually forces me to actually learn new things, and also to learn how to deal with people who don't like it, but in a way that is not tit for tat. Right? That's not a good way to deal with things. So I think that's a good way for me. Is really to learn and grow and learn different things.
because yeah, I've heard learn and grow already multiple times in this conversation. So I have the feeling that for you, learning is rather an important thing. Is that correct?
Yes, I like to learn new things. I like to grow. I like to figure things out. Yeah, and is there any better ways to do things, easier ways? I'm a very lazy person. So
Mm.
as little as I need to do, the better, which usually means, according to my friends and colleagues, I actually did a lot more because I need to figure out how to be lazy.
Yeah, that I recognize that yeah, you try to do, but meanwhile you're learning, and actually you spend maybe more time, or yeah, more energy or whatever.
That's
But yeah, but at the same time it gives you, or at least that's what I'm hearing, I think it gives you a lot of energy. So yeah.
It's fun. It's fun to learn, new things. Whether I like the subject I'm learning, that's a different matter, but at least I, get to learn them, and then
Hmm.
I can decide whether I like them or not.
Hmm.
But yeah,
I,
I do
I,
like
I see that. Well, this has been really fun, and really, I feel very passionate. And we talked about passion and drive before. Do you have any idea what drives you, where that passion, where that drive came from?
I guess my parents. So as Chinese, the parents always want the children to do well, to be successful. I remember when I was young, one time I was reprimanded for getting 98 points out of 100, even though the person who came in second only got like 80 something. But another time, I only got 80 something and I wasn't reprimanded. So I was told by my parents not to compare to others. It doesn't matter what others do. I need to do my best. Now, I wasn't
Mhm.
reprimanded with the 80 something because they realized the points deducted were due to the fact that I don't know that material. So that's okay. And they took it upon themselves as an action item for themselves, actually, to help me prepare my test better in the future. Now, the 98 out of 100, I got reprimanded because those 2 points deducted were due to carelessness. And I was told that if that's how the way I am, then I would never succeed because success
Mm.
takes discipline and hard work and always pay attention to the last 2%. So I guess I've taken that to heart.
That's yeah, yeah. I can definitely see that if you get raised that way, that creates a lot of drive and a lot of passion, and yeah, in how you see things. It's I like the fact that, like you say, that they didn't compare you to others. They basically compared you to yourself, or the best version, or at least the version that they thought that you could be or you should be, something
Mhm.
like that. So that's can drive a lot of passion. Yeah, I can definitely see that. So yeah, that has a different, very. It's very clear from where that comes at that moment, I would say.
Yes.
Okay, I want to move to that next question. What do you consider your biggest achievement, or at least the biggest achievement so far? And maybe before we jump into the question, what I've noticed these days is that for some people it's really hard. So because basically this is a question to ask you to brag and to be really proud. Is that easy for you to brag about something?
No,
No.
it's not easy for me to brag. Um, Two main reasons. One, again, in Chinese culture, we don't brag. It's considered bad form.
Mm-hmm.
So even when people praise us, our proper response is, "Oh, that's nothing,"
Mm,
or something. And I was born and raised in Hong Kong, and it was a British colony. Well, not anymore, but when I was growing up, it was. And interestingly, this part of the Chinese culture is quite similar to the British culture. And of course, some people will still like to brag, Chinese or Brits, doesn't matter. And they'll find creative ways to let it out. But that's not my personality. So that's my first main reason. It has been drummed into me since I was born by both Chinese and British cultures that bragging is bad form. And I've been trained to let my life and my work speak for themselves, whether good or bad. The
mm,
second main reason that it's not easy for me to brag is because I don't think I've done anything that warrants bragging.
mm,
I'm just going about my day, doing my work, helping people, solving problems. I mean, nothing spectacular. I know I've done some good work, but so do a lot of people. Now I only know I have done something great when people tell me, "Oh, Mun-Wai, this is extraordinary. You've got to tell people about this." And my usual response to that is, "Oh, it is? Why is it extraordinary? How is it different from what other people do? Why do I need to tell people about it?" And that's how I found out, oh, well, maybe it is worth mentioning. Actually, I'll tell you some funny thing. When I had to write my resumes before to list all my accomplishment, yeah, that was not easy for me. So I usually send a draft out to some colleagues so that they could tell me what's worth putting in, because they usually can come back like literally in no time and will tell me, "Oh, Manwei, you forgot about this," or "How can you forget to mention that?" And so to answer your question about my biggest accomplishment, I did a similar thing like when I had to write my resume. I quickly polled a few people who work with me closely and or know me for a long time, and I wasn't surprised when they listed some work stuff. Some of those items that they listed were already in some of my talks and presentations. But I guess now I see I have new talk examples. Woohoo! Or listed the achievement in my hobbies, like having multiple Grammy awards or performing at Carnegie Hall. Some even mention my faith, how I endure uncertainties through faith without losing sleep. I suppose all of those are achievements, but I don't really count them as achievements. It's just me being me, going about helping people solving problems. In fact, I'll quote one of them to illustrate the point. This person quoted some achievement that I did working in areas outside of my area of expertise or cone of influence, and that person say that that was a result of me working in those areas without even trying or asking. I just do, and they see the impact easily. And that's pretty much sums up who I am. But looking through what they wrote me, I see an underlying theme, and I would
mm,
say that is probably something that I'm most proud of, and it amazes me still, which is that I like to help people with their challenges and problems, even in things or areas that I have never done before. And yet,
Wow.
somehow, I seem to be able to find the right solutions for them. And I know those are the right solutions because they thank me afterwards and telling me the impact that had on their lives or their work or both. So I hope that answers your question.
It definitely is, and it's so nicely woven because you well. Meanwhile, you mentioned a couple of other achievements, but this is in the end, it's like wow, this is the real achievement. Like if you're able to help people in places where you have no experience in, that's yeah, that's wonderful. That's
And
yeah,
it's so amazing. Like, wow, that's amazing. How did I do that?
I don't know if you can teach me, I would be it. Yeah, I think that's yeah, really a nice amazement and a nice achievement. So yeah, really thankful for sharing that. I want to move to that next question. Do you have a personal agility tip to share?
Oh, I am glad you asked me now instead of a few years ago because I wouldn't know how to articulate it. Because this is just how I am. It's all instinctive. It's not something that I have to remind myself. But one of my mentors told me that I can't teach people intuition. I have to be able to articulate it. And it took me some years to finally able to describe it in a succinct way. Maybe you can tell me if it's easy to understand after I tell you.
Hmm.
So here it is. I wouldn't say it's a tip. It's just how I operate. So first, know your why. So for whatever I'm doing, I always ask myself, why am I doing it? What is the purpose? What is the outcome I'd like to achieve? What am I really trying to do? And I assess them constantly because things change, environments change, circumstances change. So constantly I ask myself, does what I'm trying to do still apply? So that's the why. Now, after knowing your why, then understand your reality. What is really going on right now? And expect that change is the only constant. So assess your situation frequently.
Hmm.
And then only after knowing your why and understanding your reality would I recommend making a plan. Because knowing your why is telling you where you're going, and understanding your reality is knowing where you are right now. You can't make a plan without knowing those first. Now, when making a plan, I would keep a holistic perspective. I don't just jump straight into trying to figure out how to solve whatever problem that may be. I would ask myself, well, what's the bigger picture here? How does this thing fit into the bigger picture? And after you have a plan, whether it's a work plan or personal plan, don't be married to your plan. Go back and assess your reality and your why. Again, expect that change will come. So stay curious, be flexible, and be ready to adapt. Oh, one more thing. In order to be flexible and ready to adapt, we'll need new skills. So don't stop learning. It's a lifelong journey. Well, I hope that's easy enough to understand.
It's I think it feels more like multiple tips all together because it's like yeah, start with the why is definitely something that is yeah really important. Knowing where we are at yeah, so many people that think about the why forget about thinking where are we at this point. We might sometimes forget about the travel that we have already done and that we moved on maybe from some time ago. So even if we discover a new why, we might check, hey, wait a minute, where are we now? So yeah, there is a lot more into that. So that yeah, I really like that that multiple faceted way, I would say, of
So
things.
sort of
Yeah.
a cycle, right? It's a wash, rinse, and repeat. So you know your why, you understand your reality, make a plan, don't get married to it, reassess again, and then just wash, rinse, and repeat like this cycle.
Wash, rinse, and repeat. I like that. It's yeah, but it's and that's again what a lot of agility is. It's like okay, we do something and we learn, and when we retry or we adapt a little bit, and but it's the smaller the cycles, the more we learn and we can adapt. The
Exactly.
bigger the cycle, the harder it is to actually to recover if we're going in the wrong direction or doing something wrong.
That's
So
right.
yeah, and the multiple steps is so important with because at any kind of way, even if you repeat it, Your why might have changed. Your direction where you are might be at a different place than you thought you were going to be in many
Exactly.
cases. So that's yeah, I really like that. I want to move to that next question. What have you learned about remote working in the last couple of years, or maybe in a long time already?
I was about to say I have been working in distributed environments for almost 20 years. Distributed is similar to hybrid environments where there are people in the office, there are people who are remote. The only difference is for distributed environments, there's always a critical mass of people in each location, not just one person here, one person there. So I have learned very early on that we need to be cognizant about not treating the remote folks as second class.
Hmm.
The remote people should have the same quality of experience, including but not limited to access to people, access to knowledge, access to systems. So my advice was, and still is, if one person is remote in your team, we are all remote. That means we all will sit at our own computers, logging into the meeting individually.
Hmm.
Now, unfortunately, before the pandemic, people who were on site would rarely heed this advice because they like the convenience of sitting next to each other in a conference room and, of course, inadvertently leaving the remote folks behind. Now, during the pandemic, the knowledge workers were forced to work from home, but that's not remote working. It's just us working from home so that we didn't infect and kill each other.
It,
Remote work.
I kept saying at that moment it felt more like living at work than working at home, as it's a little bit.
Because you don't have a choice, right? You have to stay
Mhm,
home. You cannot go anywhere, because if you go anywhere, then there's a chance that you're going to infect someone and kill that someone, and
mhm,
that's not what we want, right? And so it's a forced situation, and remote working is not that, right? Remote working is not a forced situation. It's really about having the freedom to work anywhere while being productive and able to contribute meaningfully. Right? So if you have the freedom to work anywhere else, that means that I can work from home for some people. Or, well, home is not going to work for me. I'll work with coffee shops for others. Or in hotel lobbies. I heard some people love to work in hotel lobbies. Now that doesn't work for me because it's just too noisy for me. But for some, it seems to work. Okay. Or maybe co-working space that is closer to their homes instead of the office. Maybe the office is too far away. Or it can be the office as well, right? So it's really the freedom of working anywhere. Now, obviously, not all types of work can be done remotely. Hospitality industry, for example, or if you're working in a lab or any physical work. So I am talking about knowledge work here.
mm,
And if we truly want to be inclusive, we need to take into account people's preference on where they want to work and make sure wherever it may be, they can be productive and contribute in a meaningful manner. Now, unfortunately, a lot of people, including executives, company senior leadership, and even agilists, don't think that way. Even though during the pandemic, it was proven that working from home not only not decreased productivity, it actually increased productivity. They still want what they're used to, what they believe in, and what they're comfortable with, and force everyone else to adhere to the preference. I mean, we've all heard about back to the office mandate, right? I mean, I'm sure you've heard of
mm.
that.
Oh yeah.
So so I mentioned about working remotely is about having the freedom to work anywhere. Well, which we talk about the work anywhere part, but there's a second part, which is being productive and able to contribute meaningfully. That means we need to question the way we work. I am also sure that you have heard of Zoom fatigue, right? And even now, back into the office, we have back to back meetings, sometimes double booked, triple booked. And I would like to ask, is meetings really the best way to achieve what we want? Are there better ways to collaborate, especially now that we have remote and hybrid environments? Now, spoiler alert, there are. In fact, I am writing a short storybook, a business fiction, if you will, about killing meetings and what other ways of collaborations there are. And I hope that this book would come out before the end of this year. And I got some very positive early beta reader feedback already. So fingers crossed. So yes, we need to be willing to go out of our comfort zone, our preferences, and learn new ways of working and collaborating.
Yeah, I really like that, and I think yeah, I'm glad you also talk about the fact that you were doing it way before the pandemic, because yeah, it's many people discovered it during the pandemic, but not everybody. And I think yeah, and I really like what you said, that before the pandemic, people were thinking like, oh, but we have remote people calling in and they can see us because we have one camera in the full room. It's like, yeah, that's maybe not working. Um, right now, even if we're in a meeting room with multiple people, if someone is remote, everybody should log into their computer that we can see each other, and we might still have the large screen and whatever, but still everybody on there. The
Exactly.
risk is that sometimes people want to keep working on their computer, so we should have more or other meeting hygiene. But that was something we seen already before, and I think remote is becoming worse. But it's the same hygiene, meeting hygiene that we
Well,
need to have.
that that is the second point that I make, right? It's people need to be able to contribute in a meaningful manner. And if people are actually working on something else, do they need to sit in that meeting?
Mhm.
Is meeting really the best way to achieve what we want? Are there better ways to collaborate instead of
But sometimes they are the right people, but actually the fact that they get distracted by other things, they are not contributing to the meeting, and we notice it because it's many. If you ask them something, it's like they're distracted. Like, could you repeat? Well, yeah. Now you're basically losing time for all the others in the meeting, and yeah, then yeah, that's meeting hygiene is so important in many different kind of ways and many different kind of things.
like to challenge that thinking, right? Meeting hygiene, sure, but then I would like to challenge why are people distracted?
Hmm. Oh
For
yeah, but
example, right, when you and I are talking right now, are you going to be distracted? And if your
no.
answer is no, why not? And why can't that be the same with any other meetings? What is so different about this conversation versus that one? Right? That's is how I would challenge people to think, which means there's something else more important. That's why they can be distracted. That means that meeting is not as important as you think. Why is that? Is there a better use of their time instead of having them sit in the 60-minute meeting, 2 hour meeting, or an hour and a half meeting, whatever that may be, right?
Mhm.
Or maybe we can get their input some other way. Maybe they only need to be there for the first 15 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever that may be, right?
Yeah, that's true. But sometimes I've seen people that are in the right meeting and it's important, but they get distracted because I don't know, some parts they're less interested, and then still the other parts. But then again, are we trying to cramp in too much things in the same meeting, and do we need to have everybody for the full thing? That definitely is another part, which is for me part of meeting hygiene as well. Who do you invite, and okay, that's
Yes.
we need to know what is the goal of the meeting, and do we need to invite everybody.
Oh,
That's
and then the book that is coming out because it's actually going to literally tear the meetings apart and said which parts of the meeting can be done asynchronously, which part needs to be actually face to face, synchronous. And that's in that way, first of all, you shorten the meetings, you have fewer meetings. And when the meetings are shorter, well, people would pay attention. Say, oh, it's only 30 minutes. I can, I can pay,
I can pay attention for if it's for
yeah,
30
30
minutes.
minutes.
That's
Right? Other than the sky falling, it's like, well, wait 30 minutes. I'll get back to you in 30 minutes. Usually, yeah, 30 minutes. It's no big deal. I can wait 30
I
minutes.
think that's the other part, is people think we need to be, yeah, we need to be reactive, and or sometimes other people think we need to be reactive, and like, no, then there is something else going wrong if we can't,
Absolutely.
if there is not something we, yeah, that it can't wait half an hour or whatever, then yeah, then we have a very different kind of problem, I would say. It's
Yes. That's it. You're right. You're absolutely right. It's a completely different conversation. It's a problem with our digital age.
yeah, well, yeah, but that, well, this is for me also a lot about remote work, is that remote work basically emphasizes all these problems, because it's not that these problems were not there in normal meetings, or whatever normal means, but in physical meetings you
Yes.
also had people who were distracted, you also had bending, but once you do it remotely it becomes way more obvious, and it's even more easy to get distracted, and to do whatever. So yeah, that's a lot there. So I'm really
Yeah.
looking forward to learn about that book, and to learn about these things. So yeah, definitely. Yeah. hope to learn when that comes. And talking about books, I want to go. I know you had a couple of books you wanted to talk about. So, what's a book that you thought about and that you wanted to bring here?
So I am currently reading, let's see if I can show this correctly. I'm currently reading This is Beyond Budgeting, A Guide to More Adaptive and Human Organizations by Beata Bosnis.
Mhm.
I am also reading two
And
other
I'm going
books.
to show it also here just to make 100% sure, but it's exactly the same cover. So yeah.
That's right. And then the other book is
Wait,
actually
wait,
Agile.
let's start with the first one. Let's start with the first one. Why should
Oh,
people read the first one?
well, actually, let me give you all three titles because then we can dive into the first one.
Okay,
Because
that's fine.
I think from the titles, you can actually glean a little bit about why I like to read these books.
Hmm.
So the second book is Agile HR and Deliver Value in a Changing World of Work by Natal Dank and Rina Hellstrom. And
Hmm.
then the third book
And this
is
is this is that one. This is that one for.
right.
You
That's
show it
right.
really well, but I prefer to also show it just to
Oh,
make sure that if it's harder for some people.
and then the third
Uh,
one, hopefully you can see that too, is the Startup, Scale Up, Screw Up, the 42 Tools to Accelerate Lean and Agile Business Growth by Jürgen Apelo. I will let you show that there if you have it.
I have
There
it
it
as
is.
well, and it's actually I don't know exactly where, but it's somewhere in the library behind me as well. Just like the actually I have all three books, so yeah. So it's
Woohoo! So maybe from the titles themselves, you can see that I'm always looking at the holistic picture,
mm,
trying to eliminate or minimize the influence that inhibits the team from working effectively together. Now, yeah, let's dive into that book. This is the Beyond Budgeting. So that one is the second book that Beata actually wrote, following his original book called Implementing Beyond Budgeting,
mhm,
Unlocking the Performance Potential, and it was published in 2008, I think, and then there's a significantly revised second edition in 2016, I think.
mhm,
So compared to his first book, this second book is on purpose a short book. It condensed the messages to fit into people's hectic schedules and still sharing new experiences and insights. Um, so let's talk about what actually is beyond budgeting and why do I even
mhm,
bother reading this book? Okay, so beyond budgeting is much more than budgets. It challenges actually traditional management, which has the budgeting process and the budgeting mindset of prediction and distrust at its core, well, hence the name beyond budgeting. It is actually a comprehensive model addressing both leadership and management principles, and I should say leadership principles and management processes, and the importance of coherence between the two. Well, there is so much pressure today on the executive team, much more than ever before. And it's
mhm,
not just about becoming greener or more sustainable, yes, that too, but also being more adaptive and dynamic. And there are
mhm,
tons of models and books out there claiming to have the answer. In fact, many respond by going on an agile transformation journey. Now, if you go by the dictionary definition of agile, which is the ability to move quickly and easily and with grace, then it's fine. Because in order for a company to move quickly and easily with grace, every part of that company has to work together to make that happen. However, the agile with the capital A is only about software and how
mhm.
software or product teams work. While that has been great, the company is only as agile as the least agile department. So
Oh
it
yeah.
doesn't right? It doesn't matter if the engineering department or even the entire product development organization is agile. If the rest of the company doesn't work together, then the company is not able to move quickly and easily, and definitely not with grace. But when you try to scale agile with the big A, holes appear. For example, the budget is the elephant in the room on the agile transformation journeys. Now, according to Beyond Budgeting, they fill these holes because it was intended and designed as an agile way of managing an organization. So I decided to dig into it. Um, I haven't finished reading it yet. I'm almost done reading it. I do have to say that while Beyond Budgeting gives you practices and tools on what to do, I found that it is more about changing the way we think, which is a lot more difficult, actually. So adopting different practices, tools, frameworks, and methodologies, I mean, without changing the way we think, is not going to help much. For example, I'll give you an example. OKRs, the objectives and key results. I never liked it. Um, Not because it's not good, but because it cannot really realize its full potential when there's something else competing to affect how people do work, which is budget, which include the reward and recognition scheme and the performance management system. And by the way, those are two of the six beyond budgeting management processes that they mentioned in there. I mean, there are lots to talk about, and we can spend another hour just talking about it. But I'll bring up only one other thing, an interesting observation. Europe is more ready to adopt beyond budgeting, and they have, than the US. And I believe it's a control and trust issue, and I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah, but well, this series, the Who is Agile series, was originally a series of blog posts that turned into a book, and then 10 years later, turning into the video. And Bjarte was invited to that originally series. So yeah, I'm a big fan. He spoke at actually many agile conferences in Europe, and in that sense, yeah, I'm not surprised with your last message that you're saying. At the same time, I've also seen other companies in Europe that are less adapted, and I know that there are some larger companies in the US that are trying or at least doing some parts of beyond budgeting and some really doing it. Of course, I'm not working in these companies, so I don't know how much they're actually doing it and how much is lip sync to everything that it says about beyond budgeting. But yeah, it's for me is indeed agile in spirit at different parts of the company, and I think
Exactly.
that's yeah. I really like many of the metaphors that he's using in all of his work to explain and yeah, I've worked in banks where you see some of that rigid ways of thinking where yeah, if they would do the same thing to their own customers, customers would not be customers from them. But still, the way they lead their projects and the fact that you can only ask for money once a year for these kind of things and have your budget all yeah set up instead of like within beyond budgeting rolling forward to look at these kind of things. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm a big fan of all these things. So yeah.
yeah, and I
Uh,
think it's a
yeah,
huge
go ahead.
part of it is Beata likes to say a huge part of it is a trust issue, right? It's a control and trust issue. Do I trust you? If I don't trust you, I have to, reprimand you for, one person did something wrong. Let's have a policy to penalize everyone. Sorry.
Mhm.
Uh,
Oh, and yeah, I have many stories about that, but one of the worst I would say is that there was a person in a company that was yeah, I don't want to go too much into details because for people who know me and who knew me at that company, it would be very clear what person it is. But let's just say that he was not following certain rules or that he was doing, and there was no real official rule about that, but they didn't want to tell that person like, what you're doing is actually, we don't consider it healthy, so we don't want you to do that. He did it for good faith and good things, but they were afraid to tell him. So because they really liked the work and he was yeah a very committed person to this company, and so they invented a new rule for the whole company, talking a couple of hundred people. And of course, who was the one person that didn't follow the rule? That was the exact person for who they created the rule. And I was like, come on, and you make the life worse for everybody else because we didn't need that rule, but it was written in a very specific way, and then they still didn't. That person didn't apply because he didn't feel it applied to him. It was a him, of course. It's almost always a him in these kind of cases, uh, and they never told him. And it's like yeah, and I think
exactly.
I need to think, but I think that person left that company already, and I have a friend still working at that company, and I remember him complaining about that rule still being active while the other person is already gone. So yeah, and they're stuck with that rule for a person that's no longer there that never applied that rule. It's like, oh god, yeah,
Exactly.
it's
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's just
mhm.
not the way it should be. And I would say that, deal with management processes, which that's one of the policies that is being made, also need to be revisited from time to time. Is it still valid? It's not valid
Mhm.
anymore. Delete, kill, erase, please.
Yeah, and I think in many countries we have lots of laws that no longer apply. I don't remember, but I think a couple of years ago there was an article where they looked at many of the stupid laws that were in Belgium, like totally didn't apply anymore because yeah, it was more like when we didn't have cars anymore, and it was more about horses or whatever. And these rules are still there, and you can actually get fined because it might be applied, but it was not why it was intended. So lots of these different things is like, come on, that's yeah, this is ridiculous at many different kind of ways. Yeah. And sometimes it's yeah, people forget and then they don't think about it. But yeah, some of these laws might be there and might hinder other kind of ways of working and ways of thinking.
Yeah.
You showed three books. Is there, you talked about one? Do you want to add some more about one of the others?
Uh, so Startup, Scale Up, Screw Up. I mean, I finished reading that some time ago, but I found myself actually going back to it from time to time because it's very helpful to understand the different stages that you're in, your
Hmm.
business or your company, um, and make sure that we are not skipping stages. Just like when we grow up, when we're born, and become a baby, and then a toddler, and then later on we grow up, and then a teenager, and then we become young adult and all that, and we don't really jump stages. So I love to go back from time to time just to make sure, okay, what have I forget to do? Because I
Mm.
try to scale up too quickly, or I try to, do things too quickly, and I ended up, of course, with screwing up. And so, yeah, I found it very helpful. It's indeed lots of tool sets, and not just tools. Jurgen is really good to give examples, stories, his interviews, and the theory behind it, why, and then of course the tools, how you do it. So I found it very helpful. It's sort of things that I go back to from time to time. Agile HR, I haven't actually finished reading it. I know that Natal Denk actually wrote a second book already called Agile L&D, I believe, learning and development. And I like that book, and I have also talked to Natal Denk. She has come onto my podcast as well as my meetup. It's really to remember I talk about how there are other things that are affecting people, how they work,
Mhm.
like OKRs. I don't like OKRs because there are things that are competing. Well, performance management is one of them, and performance management is tied to reward and recognition, right? So if money is is in the equation, then guess how what people are going to do? They are going to do what is going to give them the reward or the money or
Mm.
bonus or
Punished by
salary.
rewards.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. So agile HR, the tell actually talk about how do you do actually performance management, or rather say feedback. Forget about performance management, but how do you give feedback that is more frequent, but is not heavy weighted like what HR department usually asks people to do, which is extremely heavy weight. And then now say, oh, we need feedback more frequently. Okay, let's instead of doing once a year, let's do it 4 times a year. Great, you just added the workload, 4 times the workload. Nobody wants that, right? It's like, no, 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 no. That's not how you do it, HR people. And also to talk about the mindset of the HR folks. And turns out HR people are very siloed. And so how do you actually work together? And really to talk about focusing on the customer, not about you, not about what you would want. What about not about perfectionism, because HR always like to make sure everything is perfect and then they roll out whatever that new process it is. And without understanding the process doesn't work for people. But in their mind it works for people. So it must work. And everybody groan when you get an email from HR. So they mentioned a lot about how HR actually works, performance management, reward and recognition, also learning and development, and hiring, onboarding people, continued career development, basically the mindset of HR. How do you process or roll out programs? How do you actually test things out? Have a mindset of experimentation. So it's actually very helpful to me because I have been working in HR, even though I'm not an HR person in my role as a sort of a chief of staff role, and so I was doing a lot of those. But again, I'm not an HR person, so I'm coming in from the outside. I have an agile mindset, I would like to think, but again, I am not them, right? I don't know what other work do they do from day to day basis. So this book actually makes me understand, okay, so understand from an HR perspective, because both Natal Dank and Rena Hellstrom were HR and work in HR departments. And from an HR perspective, from the inside, this is possible and how it can be possible. So it is a very good information for me. And as I already mentioned, I like to look at things from a holistic perspective. So, HR beyond budgeting, which is look at finance, budgeting, management, leadership, all of these. What are some of the things that would affect people's behavior and how they work, and that, of course, in turn, affecting how flexible and adaptable and agile an organization can be. And so that's the reason why I sort of also
Mhm.
read those two other books.
Lovely, lovely. Yeah, I really wanted to take the time for talking about the three books, because it felt like it's kind of like you said, there's three different kind of books. It's very broad, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, they have a similar kind of message. Like, okay, this is broader than just software. I really like that. At the same time, yeah, it depends on how we look at that. I've also seen people who try to use agile everywhere, but then misunderstand a lot of the what's done in software as well. And I think if you do some kind of agility or you want to bring agility to another field, you still have to look for the technical excellence in whatever we're doing, because that is also an important part of agile, and that is sometimes forgotten when they look for agile somewhere else. Like, hey, what is the core aspect and how do we define technical excellence? And yeah, again, beyond budgeting, agile HR, it's really going to the core from some of these things. So thanks for bringing these books in there.
Absolutely.
And yeah, for me, the book from Jürgen, what I really liked, that he was very open about his own screw ups and his own kind of things, because he was, yeah, it was very enlightening to see him write about things that were in a way hard, and I think, yeah, it's very open and transparent about these things. I know it confused some people, because why would you write about that? But I think, yeah, Jürgen doesn't mind about that kind of thing, and that's exactly what I like about him.
Yeah, it's very valuable of, hey, lessons learned, right? This It's not about screw up, right? We will all come on, in our lives, nothing is smooth sailing, you
Mm,
succeed all the time. We will screw up. I mean, I guarantee it, right? If you haven't yet, just keep living, you will. And, so the point is not about not trying not to screw up. The point is what happens after you screw up, right? So it's the
mhm,
lessons learned. What have you learned so that you don't do the same mistakes again? Now, next time you may have make new mistakes. That's fine, new mistakes and new learning, right? Just don't repeat the same mistakes again, right? That's the and I really like how Jürgen, yeah, he has, he does not mind being transparent and open about his lessons learned, and
exactly.
not just in this book, actually in a lot of his writings, in his talks and things like that. You hear a lot of experience, and to me, those are extremely valuable because I'm like, well, you know what? I don't have enough life to make every single mistake possible in this world. So I want
Exactly.
to learn from someone who made those mistakes, and then so that I don't make those mistakes. So
And you can make your own mistakes,
exactly.
and share these.
I don't
Yeah,
think, which is then I will share with other people, right? And
exactly.
then going back to the agile HR, it's very you mentioned that people just sometimes to do agile everywhere. Agile can be done everywhere, but that again depends on what your definition of agile is. If it's the capital A agile, that's a problem. If it is the the dictionary definition of agile, that's not problem at all. What I mean by that is a lot of people like to equate agile with a big A, uh, as like Scrum. Scrum is agile. No, it's not. I'm sorry, it is not.
Hmm.
Scrum. Scrum is a subset of Agile. It's one of the methodologies that you use. You can use a lot of things. So if you think Scrum equals Agile, now you go into HR and said, "Thou shall use Scrum."
That's
Good
exactly
luck.
what I meant. Yeah, that doesn't work. Yeah, right.
It's not going to work. Exactly. Right. But if you have the Agile mindset, which is what is it? You experiment, you test it out, you focus on the customer, right? You don't perfect everything first, right? You actually talk to the customer first, understand their needs, and then you make an experiment. You have a hypothesis, and then you experiment it, and then you learn from it, and then you iterate from it. And after a few iterations, hey, it's good enough. Let's launch it out. Right, let's launch it, let's roll it out. But then people already have experienced it. Some people have experienced it, not everybody, because you want small groups, right? And then you also have the mindset of always inspect and adapt. Not that, okay, now that I wrote it out, done, move on, next project. No, 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 no. Go back, right? Does it still serve the purpose? Is this actually serving if not, what can we change, revise, pivot? Right. So these are all the agile mindset that we actually need to apply. But how it actually manifests in HR look very different, right? Do they use a Kanban board? For some HR disciplines, they do. It's very helpful, but they don't do Scrum. They do Lean. They do Kanban. Wonderful, right? In some discipline of HR, that doesn't apply at all. That doesn't work. Well, so be it. That's fine. Some of them do iterations. Some of them don't do iterations. Some of them the iterations is 1 week. Of course, if you look at Agile with an A, well, 1 week that is way too short. 1 month is way too long. Well, you know what? You need to look at what HR actually does, right? And again, it's the agile mindset. And that's why I really appreciate the book because it's actually speaking from the HR professionals. They know their discipline, and now they say, "Hey, this is how it can work for us." And then again, the goal is to able to adapt, and actually meets customer needs in a quick enough fashion. But again, a lot of people in the agile industry only talk about quick. But you also mentioned about excellence, right? And which is important. You need to
Mhm.
make sure your craft is always honed in, improve your craft so you can achieve excellence. But excellence does not equal perfection. That's two different things. And HR
Right.
people really like driving, oh, I need to be perfect. That is not needed, but excellence is needed, right? So what does that mean for HR people? I'm not an HR professional. I won't be able to tell them what that means, right? So the book actually is a great resource for HR professionals, of course, but also from people like me to have a peek in and say, "Oh, that's what it meant. Oh, okay, now if I talk to HR people, now I can understand a little better and can, understand where they come from and why they do what they do, and now I can communicate to them more effectively, right? So that they can apply to them better instead of, okay, so now how does it apply to me?" Right. So yeah, that's why I like those books. And any book of that kind of nature. So HR, finance, and anything that have to do with basically, business agility.
I really like that. And yeah, there's many of these, but okay, we have limited time, so we're only
Exactly.
focused on three here, which is already not bad. I want to move to that next question, and it's about after this conversation. Yeah, I'm really we're going all kind of direction, really interesting. So, what's a question that I didn't ask you that you think I should also ask you, and then what's the answer?
Oh, um, that's a good question. I don't know.
Thank you.
Um, I have enjoyed all the questions so far, and you know, any questions that people have asked me in the past. So I'm not sure what questions you should have asked. Um, Maybe where I'm going next, but then my answer to that question is I don't know. I mean,
I was expecting that kind of answer from you after what you said earlier.
frankly, I think I gave you enough of a sense of who I am to say, well, I don't know. I don't know enough. I don't know what the future brings, so I have literally no idea. I mean, I always think it's quite silly to plan out the next 20, 30 years. I mean, I already talked about that before, right?
Hmm.
I never answer my
And
parents
so,
what
how far ahead can you, or do you want to look ahead?
I can't even tell you that. I don't know
Mm,
because it depends on the knowledge that I have, right? So I decided what area I want to study in university when I was 15 years old or 16 years old because I have always liked science and I like to know how it applies to my day-to-day life, and that's to me means engineering. At least in Hong Kong, that is how engineering is defined. It's applied science. And so engineering it is, right? And then what engineering discipline? Well, is based on what I know at that time, right? Which some of you, I mean, you've already heard of how I do my deduction, which is by process of elimination. You might laugh of that about that, but hey, for a 16-year-old or 17-year-old, you don't know that much what those things actually mean, right? So you go from what you know at that point, and then you make decisions based on that. And do I think that I'm always going to be an engineer? I knew I won't be because I like working with people. But I think that I like science, so let's go with the science thing. And then I decided I'm going to graduate school. I didn't, decide that when I first enrolled in university. But only because after 4 years, I thought, well, I don't think I know enough yet to actually make any meaningful contribution. So I went into the graduate school. Now, I'm not saying that that's the view on anybody who only get a bachelor degree. That's not what I meant. It's just for me, I don't feel that I know enough yet. So I went to graduate school and then decided that even one coursework away from PhD. I said, no, I'm not going to get a PhD because I'm not going to be an engineer for the rest of my life. Now, my parents have heard me say that many times throughout those many years I was in, university, whether undergrad or graduate school. And my dad asked me, "Well, then why are we paying for all this tuition, when that's not what you're going to do?" Oh, good question, Dad. And he said, "Well, then what are you going to do instead?" I have no idea because I don't know. And he said, this is very frustrating. Every time I ask you a question, you said you don't know. I said, because I really don't know. Right now, so I started working as an engineer, and you heard my story about my first job. I moved out of it after 4 years, and changed into program management. Why? Because my first boss was a program manager. Now, at that time, I mean, that is a government, non-military government project. So program manager is very different from how the commercial world define program manager. Program manager is actually the boss of everybody at that time. You have a whole team of all the disciplines that is needed. You have the budget. You solve that problem for that customer. And so I said, "Oh, well, and as the curious, I told you right in the beginning who I am, introduced myself as I'm a curious kind. So I actually went to my boss at that time and asked him, "Well, what do you do that is different than what I do?"
Wow.
uh, Right, and that's not normally a question. I mean, looking back, that's not a question you normally ask a boss, especially when you are fresh graduate, right? It can be misconstrued in so many different. Are you challenging me? Are you, all these things? But again, as I said, my boss is a wonderful boss. He encouraged people to ask questions. No question is bad question. And I was a system engineer at that time, meaning I actually have software, hardware, and firmware underneath me. That's why I said I'm in a leadership role. I define the technical requirements. When meeting with clients and customers, he and I went together. I'm the technical side, and he's the overall. So as far as I'm concerned, I went to all the meetings he has. I met with customers same time as he does. I'm responsible. I gave him the schedule, the risk mitigation, all the risk that is happening, and the risk mitigation plan. I gave him all that. What else does he do? Right? I mean, from someone who had zero knowledge, right? It's a genuine question. For me, it's a genuine question. I wasn't
Hmm.
questioning, right? And he saw it as it is, and he said, "Do you really want to know?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, then I'm going to invite you to all the meetings I have." Oh boy.
Wow.
Uh, be careful what you wish for. But I do have to say that now it opens my eye, right? What program management actually means. And yes, I mean he deal with manufacturing, which I didn't have to deal with manufacturing. I knew that before he did that. But what I really found out, the most important thing I found out is how he built the team. what environments that he actually create for the team. It's a safe and trusting environment. That's the way
Mhm.
that that's why I feel included. That's why I feel the team cohesiveness. That's why the project actually, was actually on time and under budget and all that good stuff. And unfortunately, as I said, that's an exception. That is not the norm, right? And I want to work with people is because, yeah, technical challenges, it's fun to solve technical problems. But again, if you can reproduce it in the same environment, in the same situation, that solution that solved the problem will work every single time. That doesn't work with humans. There's no such thing as, same human problems or same situation, even if it's same humans involved, right? The me yesterday or the you yesterday is different from the you today and will be different from the you tomorrow because of the experiences that you have. So
Mhm.
even with the same people, um, the problems for me is more fun to actually solve that puzzle because that solution that worked yesterday may not work tomorrow. Now, a lot of my friends and colleagues says that's called madness and insane. Why would you want to solve the problem again and again and again and again, and only because the solution doesn't work? But I said, well, but that's what is fun for me, right? It is to
Mm.
figure out what makes people do the things that they do and what affects people, their behavior, right? There's a lot of external factors, internal ones, of course, as well, but external factors, and really try to understand the external factors. So for me, I don't know enough, so I cannot tell you. Now, once I work with my boss, my first boss, program management, and then after 2 years, I actually move out to the commercial sector. And of course, program management means something else, but still, the environment was completely different. I was micromanaged to the T. There are a lot of how should I say it, discrimination based on my gender, a number of other things that I have felt, and I said, I don't really want to be an engineer. I want to see if
Mm.
I can help people to have a better working environment. So then I said, I'm going to be a program manager, right? Not knowing what program manager actually means in the commercial world, but I said, I'm going to be a program manager. So I went into program management, which is also very funny because early on, I have a boss who told me, Mun-Wai, this is the wrong way of doing it. You should do it this way. And I said, no. I mean, in fact, the boss told me I need to know how to look at code and actually fix some bugs in the code or work on some feature enhancement so that I can understand engineering. I told her, if that's what program management needs to do, we have a bigger problem with your software team. That's not what program management needs to do. So anyway, so I actually figure out what program management is and I worked on it, and then, as I said, I'm actually really trying to peel the onion of what is affecting the way people behave. And so I start with engineering, and then I go into product management because I thought product management must be the problem. Of course, find out, they're not. And then all the other areas. Now, of course, once you start branching out, that wasn't my goal. I wasn't trying to say, oh, I need to climb the corporate ladder. No, I was trying to find that problem. Where does the problem lies? Right, and with
Mm.
that all that said, I was reluctantly promoted to finally to the chief of staff role because I have access to all these data in the company, which unless you are a certain rank in the company, you're not supposed to have HR data, financial data. That's a liability to a company. So they said, no, we have to promote you. Er, I didn't like that, right? So when you ask me when would I know, I don't.
Mm.
I I didn't want to do that, but I was reluctantly promoted, right? And then the latest change into consulting, that's slightly different story. That's actually that's God's leading me. But then one of the reasons that prompted me was because every company that I went into to help as a full-time employee, it feels like Groundhog's Day. It feels like Groundhog's Day. Like,
Mm.
when they interview you, they said, "Oh, yes, yes, please come and help us. Yes, we want to change. We want to, to do better." And of course, when I interview with the CEOs always thought that, "Okay, I'll bring you in so that you can tell my leadership team what they did wrong."
But
And
I
then
don't need to change.
exactly. And so when they realize how much change they actually need to do, they're like, no, I don't really mean that." And so
Hmm.
it's like a groundhog day, right? Every company's like that. So I'm thinking, is it
I
something I
recognize
should
a
do?
lot of that. I
So
recognize.
anyway, so that's sort of I don't know how to answer your question. I really
I
don't know.
think you did a great answer to that. It's going again in many different directions, but for not knowing, you gave a long answer for not knowing, and at the same time, it explains this the right answer. So yeah, I really like that. I hope everybody who's listening likes it as much. Let's move to that next question and that last question actually. Who do you think I should invite next? And I think you have actually a couple of names, a couple of people that you wanted to invite.
That's right. There are three people I would like to recommend. The first one is David Laskinus. Second is
And
Malud.
I think that's David.
Yes, that's David. Hello, David. And then
Hello,
second,
David. Wait. Let's take the time here. Why do
sure.
we want to invite David? Why do we should I invite David?
Is an all-around agilist. Now, don't be
Mhm.
fooled by his quiet demeanor. He is friendly, he's approachable, kind, resourceful, and fun to work with. He also have high emotional intelligence,
Mhm.
and exceptional knowledge and experience in product engineering and agile. To me, he is the embodiment of agility. The way that he thinks, the way that he approaches problems, and the way he helps people find the right solutions in their context. And so I think it's time that more people know about that.
I like that. I like that. And you wanted to jump immediately, so let's indeed jump to the second person you want to invite.
So it's Malud Chakravarty.
And oops, this is
I
Malou.
Yes, it is. Hello, Malud. So I'm going from all around agilist to now specialist.
Hmm,
We talked about remote work earlier. So Malud has been talking about remote work way before the pandemic, when a lot
exactly.
of right, when a lot of agilists said agile has to be done in person. In fact, many agilists still say that today. So I think it'll be good for you to talk to her and get her point of view. I think we can all gain some wisdom and experience from her, and maybe it'll help us to be more curious and dispel some of our long-held beliefs. So that's Malud.
hmm Definitely. Yeah, I've been in contact with Malou for a long time, and I'm happy to finally have someone inviting her. So yeah, really looking forward to have her on the show. So and who's that? You had a third person. Who's that third person you wanted to invite?
Marina Alex.
And oops, again, this is Marina, if I'm correct.
Hello, Marina. Yes. So to
Hello.
me, Marina is the agile sales lady.
Hmm.
She's actually a sales executive, but she has transformed sales departments and executives in various industries on how sales can be done in an agile manner. When people think that, oh, it cannot be done because sales is an individual sport, it's not a team sport.
Hmm.
So her experience and approach would, I think, again, help us to be more open-minded and be willing to combat our long-held beliefs and assumptions. I mean, I think you know me by now to know that I like to look at things from a holistic perspective. So we talk about HR, we talk about budgeting, leadership, management. Well, what about sales? Don't forget about them. So Marina is a very good person to talk to because she is a salesperson and she has done it in an agile manner, and she has helped organizations in various industries of how to actually do it that way. Which, when I say individual sports, not a team sport, that is alluring to the sales commission that we probably all know about. So
Oh
how
yeah.
do you do that? So
How do
yes,
you
she
do
yes.
that? And then you get again punished by rewards because then people really want to have that low only bonus and not thinking about how could we do it. But yeah, even then in well we're at this right moment in Europe we have the what is it the EK, so there's the football
Oh yes.
tournament in Europe, and actually, well, in these sports they also have bonuses, but it's from what I understand, I don't know anything about football, nothing at all. But from what I understand, it is also a team bonus. If you don't get anything, if your team doesn't score, you will not get anything. It doesn't matter how much goals you score. If your team doesn't win, you can't continue. So yeah, it doesn't have work that way. So yeah, it's sorry, it's yeah, it is things are different if you want to work with a team and achieve
Yes,
things as a team. That's
exactly.
really wonderful. Yeah, I think Marina. I don't know exactly when, but I think already a couple of years that I've. I'm not sure what I did that I started to sneeze, but I met her already for 5 years or so. I know that I know her from before the pandemic already. So
Ah,
yeah, that's and like you say, it's really nice that people also, again, in other kind of things, look what could agile mean in that environment.
ex-
And like you say, what you didn't really say it before, but I think that's a little bit what I hear is like, this is a person that is coming from sales and that way understanding how it is, and that's how agility should be made by people knowing this thing, then learning about agility, then turning on, just like it started in software as well. It's like, this is software developers learning about, hey, we want to do it in a more agile way. What does that mean? And then defining that.
yep,
Bjarte about beyond budgeting is the exact same thing in his own core thing, looking what it is, and then other people saying, hey, that's actually rather agile what you're doing. What is agile? And then okay, moving
absolutely.
in that kind of direction.
Yeah.
It's been a wonderful conversation. We're talking a little bit less than 2 hours. It's been, yeah, it just flew by in a very quick way, I would say. If people want to connect with you, what would be a good way to reach out to you?
So the first is my website, which is
And that should be your website.
uh, yep, that's it. And then of course there's LinkedIn as well.
And that is, and unfortunately this tool doesn't allow me to show both of them at the same time, but that's your website, or that's the LinkedIn. And yeah, and of course I will add both of them also to the show notes that people can find you back later on. Yeah, I only left to thank you for all these wonderful stories about not knowing and then still knowing, and yeah, everything that in between. I would say it's yeah, like I said, the time flew by. I really enjoyed this conversation. I learned a lot for about you, but also about lots of other things. So yeah, thanks for that time.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to actually have a conversation with you. It has been fun. You asked really good questions, and that
Thank you.
really forced me to think hard. Of okay, what would that answer be? So
That's
thank you.
well, that's indeed. I'm still amazed myself when I think in 2010 I invented like 8 of these questions, and I'm still amazed at myself that I think it took me less than 10 minutes to come up with these questions. And if I now look back on the flow and everything, it's so logical. Many people love it, and yeah, I'm like, wow. I really didn't realize what I was inventing at that moment. So yeah, I'm still happy about that as well. So, but
Yeah, that is definitely one of your strengths. I mean, that's not my strength that I know. I'm not good at asking questions like this, but I'm good at talking to people. So, um, and
well,
then questions
you what you
during
said
a
in the beginning, asking questions when you walk around. I doubt you're not fully good at asking questions, but yeah, maybe in an interview it's different kind of style.
it's usually during a conversation, then question would, to me,
Right. Exactly. On
naturally
the
come up,
spot.
right?
Exactly.
Instead of, oh, here's are the questions ahead of time that I want to move to. That I wouldn't know. And yeah, so and according to a lot of my colleagues, I actually didn't really ask that many questions. I just listen, and
Mm.
I am very comfortable with silence. Unfortunately, most people I talk to are not.
So they
So
keep talking.
yes. See? So I'm like, "Oh, hey, I didn't need to ask because I just sit there and then they would just keep telling me things." I'm like, Okay. And then I'll make one sentence or one word, two words, and then more pouring. And okay. So that's why I said I'm not good at asking questions
But
because
good at
people,
listening when people
yeah,
start talking. Well, that's a skill on its own as well, I think. Yeah.
no,
Well, and but
thank you.
also good at explaining things because that's the energy I felt this evening. So thank you very much for that time.
Yeah, and thank you so much for the opportunity. It's has been fun. And you're right, time flies by indeed.
Okay.
Didn't
Well,
realize that's been long. So, all right.
see ya. Thank you for watching Who's Agile, where the stories of agilists come to life. I hope you liked today's interview. Subscribe if you're not subscribed and want to get to know other agilists.